Good morning. Wow. Just want to talk to you just for a second. Just remind you how personal and how private Jesus was. I know that he came because of the whole world. I understand the scripture, and it means a lot to me. For God so loved the world, every one of us, that he sent his only begotten Son. He gave his life so that whosoever believed in him would not perish but have everlasting life. And I understand that, and I love the story of his birth, and I love his life. And those first 30 years and all those relationships that I thought were really personal and private, because a lot of it's not recorded. And so it was just, he became flesh and dwelt among us. And then those 3 years of ministry that were just, phenomenal. And I love all those stories and all the lives that he touched and all the people that he ministered to, and just the way that we're still talking about it today. But more importantly than that to me is the 40 days after his resurrection. Those are what really get me, those 40 days after. Because in my opinion, in all the natural way we think, it was after the cross and the grave, done, I'm out of here. I'm done. I did it. Let me out of here. Let me get out of here. It's over, let's get going. But that's not what he did. He didn't just go to the cross and say, I'm done. He didn't just go to the grave and resurrect and say, I'm done. And why? Why didn't he do that? I can tell you why. Because of guys like you and guys like me. Because of little boys and little girls. And a whole bunch of teenagers. A whole bunch of teenagers. And then a lot of ladies. The reason those last 40 days are important to me, and I know that it's not recorded. I know that there's very little said, but each one of those stories I've read and reread and tried to look at, because he's so personal and he's so private. And it's just like when I was a 17-year-old young man. And, things were going pretty good. I started working when I was 14 years old. I'll never forget, $1.40 an hour, 17 years old. Worked all summer and got a 5-cent an hour raise, $1.45. I could tell you stories about that, and I continued to work all through high school. And then at 17, bought a brand new pickup, and it was just awesome. And driving it my senior year, and looked like things were going good for me. But I messed up a lot and made some mistakes, and really came to the conclusion as a teenager. Now, this is years ago. We're talking, about 50 years ago almost. But I'd already come to the conclusion that God was mad at me, that God hated me. I'd ask him over and over to forgive me for the same thing. I kept messing up, and folks weren't happy with me, and people weren't happy, and just on and on. So at 17 years old, even though it looked like, wow, he just bought a brand new pickup and things are going pretty good for him, it wasn't true. I thought God was mad at me. And I messed up pretty bad one day, and I ended up just stopping by church that night, because that's what our family did. We went to church. And they were singing a song, and that song got to me. It was about the Comforter. And I didn't know anything about that. I was pretty, didn't even really want to live. My argument was, I didn't ask to be born. Now, why am I having to make all these decisions and having to deal with all these feelings and all these thoughts? And so, live or die really didn't matter at that point in my heart and mind. But I went down to pray, and so I just went down and prayed, because that song kind of got me, and it was a bad day. And I remember telling God, I know you hate me. I know that I do the same thing over and over. And, a 17-year-old already give up on life, already could care less if I lived or died. And I had everything to live for. Great family, great friends, good education. But that's where I was at. And that night, God whispered in his spirit, I love you. I love you. And when he said that to me, it just really was so powerful because I thought he was mad at me. I thought he hated me. I thought my dad, couldn't stand me because I didn't live up to whatever expectations. And my mom, I probably hurt her. And so that's where I was at. I'd already met Susie and here we are, but didn't know if there was a future there or not. But God said, I love you. It was on a Wednesday night. I'll never forget it. 17 years old. I think the month of March, maybe the 1st of April, 1972. And so my bottom line now is on my worst days. And after I feel like I failed and after I didn't perform maybe as a pastor or a person or even messed up being a son or didn't do dad very well. The bottom line is I look up and I say, but I know you love me. And see, that's what I think these 40 days were about. Well, there was a bunch of guys like you and me, and he was convincing them how much he loved them. And there was a bunch of little boys and girls, and he was just playing with them and participating with them and showed up in their lives to convince them that he loved them. There was a lot of ladies that he met with, personally and privately, to let them know how much he loved them. See, I wasn't there when he died on the cross, and I know he did it for the whole world, and it was his love for us. But he had to personally let me know. As a 17-year-old boy, he had to personally whisper in my ear on a really bad night in my life when my conclusion was he hated me and he was mad at me. And I really believe that, but he convinced me. See, I love that he died on the cross. But more importantly than that day in my life was that Wednesday night when he whispered his love to me. And I believed it. And it's been my bottom line on my worst days, but I know you love me. And on my best days, I don't even count it, because it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is, but I know you love me. Good or bad, you love me. Right or wrong, you love me. Rich or poor, you love me. Skinny or fat, which has been the majority of my days. But I know you love me. And so those 40 days mean a lot to me, and I just wanted to tell you that today. Guys like you and me, ladies like the ones we love, boys and girls like the ones we're raising are the ones that we come in contact with. He loves them. But more importantly than knowing he loves the rest of the world, Rick Bradbury wanted to tell you today, he loves you. And I can't convince you of that, but I promise you he will. He will convince you. It'll be personal and it'll be private, but he's going to let you know how much he loves you, and there'll be no doubt in your mind. Not one doubt. I'm convinced he loves me. Why? Because he told me he did. He showed up. He came to me. He's the one that helped me understand the love of God.